I'm just going to read a verse out of the poem that Wendy's just read beautifully for us. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Tuesday was International Women's Day. It happens every year on the 8th of March. And for some people, it's a celebration of womanhood. And for others, it's a day in which the voices that call for justice and equality are given maybe a little bit more airtime and perhaps an extra column or two in the national press. So let's stop and think for a minute about some of the issues worldwide that are still facing women today. Discrimination against women and girls often begins at conception, especially in parts of India and South Asia. In parts of India and South Asia, there's a strong preference for having sons. And that's because girls are seen as a financial burden on the family due to the small incomes and the costly dowry demands of marriage. So in India, prenatal sex selection and infant death accounts for the prenatal termination and death of about 500,000 girls a year in the last 20 years. And in China, we know there have been changes around the recent law against people having more than one child. But there's still a vast inequality of number of female births to male births. We wonder why. The rate of murders of women and girls has significantly escalated in the last few years, and in places like Northern America, the levels of deaths of women has grown to astronomical levels. And they put this down to the fact that there's no investigation around domestic violence. There's a lack of interest in investigating any relationships between the women who die or disappear. And as a result of that, there's underreporting of gender-based deaths as well. Most victims are between the ages of 16 and 34. Dowry deaths are still responsible for the murder of thousands of women every year. If a bride cannot meet the financial demands of her dowry, she is often subject to torture, harassment and death by the groom's family. The United Nations Family Planning Association estimates that 5,000 women worldwide are burnt to death in murders disguised as kitchen accidents each year because their dowry was considered insignificant. And in India and Pakistan, thousands of women are victims of dowry death, and the majority of these victims are between the ages again of 15 and 34. Let's not lose sight of the fact when we're talking about dowries that these countries are, by the very fact that they're asking for dowries, seeing women as a commodity, something that can be sold. Honour killings still take place in Pakistan, Turkey, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, Lebanon, Iran, Yemen and Morocco, and in other Mediterranean countries and Gulf states. Honour killings occur when a woman is put to death for an act that is perceived to be bringing shame on their families. This can mean killing as a punishment for adultery or even for being a victim of rape. In Pakistan, nearly 500 women a year are victims of honour killings. In a study of female deaths in Egypt, 47% of female rape victims were then killed because of the dishonour of rape, that rape was thought to be brought on their family. So these are women who are victims, but still they are perceived as the persecutor and murdered. Women and girls in Bangladesh ensure that another form of violence against women, acid attacks, has been introduced over and has had very serious consequences. And they've been brought in for the punishment of crime. Approximately 200 people a year have been subjected to acid attacks where acid is literally thrown over the body. Physical and sexual abuse of girls is a serious concern in all regions. In Nigeria, listen very carefully to this, a treatment centre that was there to support the treatment of sexually transmitted disease reported that 15% of their female patients requiring treatment for sexually transmitted infections were under the age of 5. An additional 6% were between the ages of 6 and 15. In South Africa, 1 in 4 men have reported in a recent survey that having sex with a woman against her, they've reported that they have had sex with a woman against her will by the time that they have reached 18 years old. So that's 1 in 4 men have not seen that as an issue. One-fifth of all Jamaican women have experienced forced sexual intercourse, and in the United States, the Centre for Disease Control and Prevention estimates 20% of young women experience intimate partner violence. So even in the United States, somehow 20% of the people surveyed as partners felt it was okay to have sex with them and be violent whilst enjoying the act. We've all heard about genital mutilation, and it's still a serious concern. Fortunately, Nigeria this week, as part of International Women's Day, have banned female genital mutilation.
Just FGM.
But it's still practiced widely in North East Africa, through Asia, the Middle East, and immigrant populations in North America, Europe, and in the UK. Between 100 and 140 million women and girls, some as young as 9, have undergone FGM worldwide, and 3 million are still considered to be at risk. Let's see how long it takes for the law in Nigeria to make an impact. Child marriage continues to be an issue for young girls, and the risk of that relates to pregnancy, to complications in childbirth and ultimate death. And the other issue is that because children are often as young as 13, 14, 15, they don't feel as if they have the power to request the use of condoms. And as a result of that, HIV infection rises. That's the same in cross-generational sex, so where you have a young girl and maybe a man 20, 30 years older. These women are vulnerable, they are young, they perceive the man to be experienced and to know all, and consequently it gives rise to more HIV cases being discovered. Progress is being made, but it's slow, and it does give me a chance to reflect on how lucky I have been, and others like me have been, to be brought up in the UK. However, there's still a lot to do here as well, because on average in the UK, 2 women a week are killed by a violent partner or an ex-partner in the UK. 3 million people across the UK experience rape or domestic violence, stalking or other violent acts each year. That's 3 million people a year. In 2011, the Forced Marriage Unit, who advises people when they are being cajoled into marriages and relationships they're not happy with, dealt with 1,450 cases, 78% of which were women and girls. It's estimated that at least 24,000 girls in the UK are still at risk of female genital mutilation. At least 1 girl in every 3 has experienced unwanted sexual touching at school. And this astounded me. 36% of people still believe, in a recent survey, that a woman should be held wholly or at least partly responsible for being sexually assaulted if she is drunk, and 26 believe the same if she is wearing revealing or sexy clothes. Only 77% of young men agree that having sex with someone who has said no isn't rape. So 77% of people think it's okay if a girl says no to continue. That's without looking at jobs, inequality of pay, public sector workers' jobs have been the one that's been most recently affected by cuts. 2/3 of that workforce are women. There's only 1 MP, female MP for every 4 men. Approximately 70% of the people on national minimum wage are women. And it goes on. So this is where we are in terms of gender equality. It's not a new thing. It's been challenged by brave women and men almost since time began. In the Bible, in the book of Numbers, Mahlah had 5 daughters, and she and her daughters fought to maintain the right for their land when her husband died. She went to the church, and after much prayer and apparent messages from Moses, the law was changed. So they could keep their land, providing they were unmarried. But as soon as they got married, it went to the husband. So in my research, I looked up what feminists might consider to be what a believing woman, a woman who believed in God, would think and consider about this. And thankfully, the piece that came up was Galatians 3:28, which was, "There is neither Jew nor Greek, nor slave, nor free, nor male or female, for you are all one in Jesus Christ." So this isn't something we can blame Christianity for. Throughout the Bible, it's very clear that Christ himself had a very good relationship with women and was very supportive and very challenging to the men around him at the time. So it led me on to thinking, why is this happening? And I turned to John 1, chapter 2, verse 16. "For everything in the world, the cravings of a sinful man, the lust of his eyes, and the boast of what he has and does, comes not from the Father, but from the world." So inequality isn't a God-made thing. It isn't a Christ-made. It is made by those of us who walk the world and who have choices, where we can decide what our priorities are and where we choose to live and how we choose to manage our lives. Now, the good news is that there have been a lot of people, a lot of great people, men and women, who've challenged the cravings of the world. And some have had recognition, while others have been little known. There's been politicians, political agitators, people who were made famous through their acts of goodness. There's Nelson Mandela, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 for his work to end racial segregation in South Africa. There are names that we all know, like Peter Fatchell, Stephen Whittle, Jackie Forster, Stephen Whittle, well, twice I've talked about him, who have supported and championed LGBT rights. And then we go back to people like Emily Pankhurst, who was at the heart of the suffragette movement. People like young Malala. Do you remember the girl who was shot in the face for attending school? And her statement was, "I don't mind if I have to sit on the floor at school. All I want is an education, and I'm afraid of no one." There's also, in 2011, the president of Liberia was an Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and she also shared the Nobel Peace Prize for her non-violent struggle for the safety of women and the rights for full participation in peace-building processes. And her motto is, "If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough." Many other stories have come to the same conclusion. And we have people that we can aspire to. People like Mother Teresa, who did all she did through love. And her statement was, "It's not so much what we do, but it's how much love we put into doing it. It's not so much how we give, it's how much love we put into giving. Still, people are working towards a better future for us all. And at times of war, at times of high trauma, these acts become all the more real. I've always particularly liked the story of Irina Sendler in the Second World War. She was a German, but she had her own beliefs and she stuck to them. So she got permission during the war to enter the Jewish ghettos, and she got the permission from the Gestapo to go in there as a plumber and sewage expert. But she carried a very large bag of plumber's tools. And in this bag there was a space. And in that space she put babies, Jewish babies. She had a dog which she taught to bark every time the Gestapo came near. Obviously, it did put the Gestapo off a bit from looking in her van, but it also covered up the cries of screaming infants. She saved 2,500 infants and children. She was eventually caught out and both her arms and her legs were broken. But unknown to the Gestapo, she'd kept the names of all the children in a jam jar and buried it in a tree, under a tree in her garden. And when the war was over, she spent a large proportion of her older years trying to reunite families and ensuring that those that no longer had families had good, kind, loving homes. So that was a woman that went against everything to do what she felt was right. Recently there's been a young Pakistani woman who, after being gang raped, was expected by her family to commit suicide. She didn't. Instead, she prosecuted her attackers and used the compensation money she had to start schools, a women's shelter, and an organisation to support women around Pakistan. There was the group not so long ago of Turkish men who, much to the dismay of the local authorities, paraded for a day in women's skirts. And what they were campaigning for was in support of a 20-year-old student who'd been raped by a taxi driver. And the statement was, she was wearing a skirt. This week, obviously, because it's International Women's Week, there's been a big celebrity letter signed by people like Elton John, Robert Redford, Sean Parker, many, many others. And it states, nowhere on earth do women have as many opportunities as men. Nowhere. The fight for gender equality is global. These celebrities, along with their colleagues, have affirmed commitment to move equality forward. And only yesterday, and I've read this with quite a wry smile, yesterday a 787 plane was landed in Jeddah, piloted by 3 professional women pilots. The irony of it is that they had a plane worth £20 million, they had 300 passengers on board, yet in the country that they landed, they would not let them drive a car. So things are changing day by day and minute by minute, and we can all play our part. We can engage our brains before we open our mouth to repeat the quips and the sexist jokes that we've heard and been brought up with and have never considered the true meaning of. We can sign petitions when they come around on Facebook and all the other places they come from, in our attempts to right the wrongs that are going on in this world. We can voice our concerns for others, and we can use the votes that many people have fought hard for us to have in previous generations. We, all of us, can be the good in the world, the person who stands up for what's fair and right. And we can do this and follow our faith. When I was researching all of this, I googled lots of things. One thing I couldn't find was any transgendered woman that was known and had made a significant impact on the wider world who wasn't stunningly beautiful. I'd like to have found a bog standard woman that was doing that. But everybody here has had their mountains to climb. So maybe we can empathise with others who are still climbing. And finally, whilst researching this, I googled the 100 people, 100 people have made a difference in the world. And the first name on that list, when it came up, astounded me. And there was a sign if I needed it for myself or maybe for you. The very first name on that list was Jesus Christ. Thank you.
Thank you.